Weather disasters test the strength of individuals and communities. The stories of resilience and heroism that emerge are truly remarkable. Whether it's first responders, volunteers, or everyday people stepping up in a crisis, these narratives remind us of the power of preparedness and human determination. Welcome to Weather Heroes.
As part of our ongoing Katrina Chronicles, today we meet Fire Chief Billy Kelley. When Hurricane Katrina slammed into Gulfport, Mississippi, Billy was on the front lines, firefighter extraordinaire. He faced the storm's fury not only as a first responder, but as someone whose own home was ravaged. Now the department's fire chief, he reflects on those harrowing days, the scramble to save lives, the coordination of a sprawling relief effort, and the unwavering spirit of a community that refused to be broken. His story is one of grit, leadership, and a resilience that defies description. Now for the interview. Today we're going to talk to Billy Kelley. Billy Kelley was one of the chief players in the fire department along the coast of Mississippi, in particular in Gulfport, Mississippi. And he was there before the storm, during the storm, and after the storm. And so we're going to hear insights from him from that aspect, but also a little bit on the personal side too. So, Mr. Kelley, welcome, sir.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us today. I know you, and as a fire chief, your time's probably pretty limited, so thank you for sharing some of it with us.
Glad to do it.
Mr. Kelley, as you see this giant storm heading your way, obviously if there's a lot of buzz going out, there are some changes in timing a couple of times and all, but as you're in the fire department going through and planning for this, what types of things are you all thinking about? What are you doing? And also, I know on the personal side, how are you trying to respond at a personal level for your own home, for example?
Correct. Yeah, at the time when Hurricane Katrina was bearing down on us, I'd been with the department right at 5 years, so I was a firefighter driver at the time, which now I'm blessed to be the fire chief with the same department that I grew up in, and I could just remember, you kind of been through a couple other little small hurricanes, and you didn't know, and one of the hardest things was leaving home. Having small children and your wife, and so I got them buttoned up, got the house buttoned up, and made sure they went with her family to what we thought was a safe place. But and try to get my mind right to go to work to help people. And I can remember they sent us to the hospital, which was about a block. It's on the west side of Gulfport. It's about a block or two from the fire station I was at the time, because it was just a metal building. They really didn't feel safe with us riding a storm out in there. So they sent us to the hospital. And I can remember, when I got there, it was like, it looks like it's going to be a direct hit towards New Orleans. We may get something, may not be that bad. Then the next thing it kind of takes a jog back and it looks like it's going to make landfall right in Hancock County, which puts us in the front right quadrant,
right.
Which is, obviously the worst. So, yeah, being at the hospital was like a fortress, and seeing some of the damage that it took was just like, oh, man, what is outside going to look like,
Right.
So it's very nerve-wracking, just, because you lose phone service, you lose cell service. I remember the last words my wife said, the roof just blew off. Well, I'm at work on the total other side of Gulfport.
Yeah.
And, I have a mission here, and that's Gulfport. And the citizens, I can't just, go see what's going on with them. So that was probably the toughest part for me, just the unknown and not being able to speak with them.
Right. That's got to be so tough, being pulled in all those directions. So as you're going through the storm, I mean, your wife's telling you the roof's blowing off. That storm lasted a long time too.
At one point, I just thought, I swear it felt like 12 hours. I didn't think it was ever going to end. There was a point where the hospital was probably 4 or 5 blocks off the beach, and we started seeing families coming up and just saying they swam to the railroad tracks, and they got there. So we knew it wasn't going to be real good. And of course, with the winds were sustained at that point, we couldn't get our apparatus out in it. So we had to wait for the winds to subside, but we knew it was going to be bad. We just didn't know it was going to be that bad.
Yeah,
You know?
right, for sure. So as you guys finally the storm subsides, and I remember like some storm I was through when it finally it was done. I went out and looked like everything had been blown apart, but you guys were probably looking at stuff blown apart and layers of water and all sorts of things. What was, how would you describe the division afterwards?
So that I can remember going down at night, and our railroad tracks run east to west
Right.
along the coast, and that was kind of like almost like our levee. That was kind of like the debris line.
Okay.
And I can remember I was working at the station on the west side of Gulfport, and that's the port is over there, and a lot of the port containers were blown, pushed up with the surge, and they would just hit houses and would just treat them like matchsticks. I mean, houses that once stood somewhere that was just a pile of just mangled lumber. There was nothing until you got to a certain point, and then then like I said, everything just kind of piled up at the railroad tracks, and that was just kind of the line that where things just stopped.
Oh, jeez.
It was very surreal. Born and raised here. I've been here all my life. Went to high school here. I moved away for 4 years for college and came back. So, and you don't realize how much you depend on landmarks when you're traveling, as far as, hey, this landmark here, you take a left, because there was nothing there, So it was really tough.
Well, and things like that, the lack of communications, of technology, to your point, landmarks. I mean, GPS wasn't really big back then, 2005. No. So as you guys now are getting calls and having to respond, I mean, what did that look like?
So basically, calls would come in from cell phone lines through other people, just various means. And, our dispatch was basically just having to write things down and prioritize. And then once the wind subsided, they were giving us addresses. Here, go check this address. They were speaking with their family. The last time they talked to them, they were in the attic. So we did a lot of attic searches just for people riding it out. Due to the flood and the debris, coming through their structures. But yeah, there was a lot of attics, and you'd get in there, and there'd be signs of like, where somebody got in there with snacks and some cigarettes and drinks, and they were riding out in the attic. And I couldn't imagine just how scared those people were as well.
Yeah, that's gonna be pretty bad. So more like, guys, on a personal level, and then at this point, at some point, it's probably hard. You're probably trying to get a hold of your wife and the family, finding out what's going on and touch bases with her.
Yeah, I think it was probably 2 days after the storm, I finally, was able to say, told my lieutenant at the time, I said, look, I need 30 minutes. I need to go check on my wife. Right. If they're good, I'll be right back. Get my head right. I said, I need to know. Right. So I remember loading up a pickup truck with a chainsaw, a couple tools, and I headed out where they were at her uncle's house. And I can remember the road, and they lived in a nice neighborhood, big house, and I can remember the road was just littered with trees.
Right.
So I can remember just cutting my way through, and then I finally got there, and they're like, everything's good, they're safe. They went home. We lived up north of the interstate in the northern part of the city, so they made it home and was safe. So at that point, I was good. I knew my family was good. It was time to go back to work.
Right.
But until that day, and I was able to make that contact, I could. It was unsettling.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know if people can fully appreciate like the worry. Yet here you are doing this heroic job, you and the other firefighters, the emergency folks, the police, and a lot of you didn't even know what was going on with your own families.
And that's the hard part. A lot of times we have a task force here in Gulfport, part of Homeland Security. We deployed, and we've been to Florida several times, helped you guys with storms, and that's different because you're not in your hometown.
Right.
You're not worried about your family as much. But when it's happening in your backyard and you don't know if your house is there or not, I can remember some of the guys we worked with, that they're swimming out of their houses. You're reading about. So, a lot of these guys, the firehouse was the only place they had left.
Right.
They would come to work, and that was home for a little while. And they, a lot of the firemen just basically packed their families up and said, hey, go stay with aunt or uncle, a state away just so I can do work. you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and
Very
that
understandable.
was comforting to know that they were okay.
Right. Very much. So obviously, you guys are challenged. You're trying to salvage some of your own lives. I know often, like you just mentioned, you've gone to Florida. Did you get people from Florida, Georgia, other states to come here and help you all?
Oh, overwhelming! I'll tell you. I can remember about night three. I can remember a Miami-Dade fire department showing up to help us. Man, these guys were great. We take turns. They would have their apparatus. They showed up, and we would put one of our guys on there just to help them out with directions.
Right.
Because, like you said, it didn't have GPS and all that. And I can remember talking to these guys. They were great. People started showing up from everywhere, all parts of the country to help us out. And I can remember that one thing that stuck with me, these Miami-Dade guys were like, you don't understand that, like, your community's changed forever. He said, you'll see for 10 to 15 years, you're going to see blue tarps on roofs. And I said, no way.
Yeah.
He was right. He was right. Every bit of it. There's still scars, right? You can ride our coastline today and you remember what used to be there. And we still got a lot of vacant lots and, a lot of things where we just hadn't built back yet.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of those guys from Miami-Dade had been through Hurricane Andrew in '92, apparently.
And they were a wealth of knowledge too, just, helping us as far as, back then, documentation as far as getting your reimbursement from insurance and FEMA. And
Sure.
just a lot of lessons learned for us locally at a local level.
What were some of your, I guess, biggest observations of challenges in those first, few weeks, let's say?
I would say basically your first 72 hours, you need to be able to take care of yourself. Then you need to be able to take care of your constituents in your city. And help's coming. They're staging now. And they're going to be here, but it's going to take a little bit, I can remember there was a North Carolina Baptist men's group. I swear they were here 15 years.
Yeah.
I thought they moved here and were staying. They rebuilt so many houses and roofs and
Is that
stories
Samaritan's
like that.
purse? I'm sorry, is that Samaritan's purse? Hey, Samaritan's purse.
Part of it, I think maybe with it, but man, and recently they had a bad flood up there. We went and helped them out with some stuff. But humanity, and people here, like you said, they just pulled their bootstraps up and went to work. I got to pull trees off my house. I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna wait for somebody to come do it for me. And man, you just really seen that our community come together.
I've been talking to a lot of good folks about Hurricane Katrina, and the stories I've heard are just like what you said, Mr. Kelley.
Yeah.
People, getting things done, taking care of business. Not everybody is, taking care of their own good there.
Correct. And when you were done and your house was tarped and this, you went to your neighbor and you helped them. And then when they were done, you just made the block and helped whoever needed help. And that's what folks did.
That's really good.
Yeah.
So what type of obviously there was food was a challenge, clean water, gasoline, diesel, everything. How did you all get around some of those challenges? Were you getting any help from the outsiders or those things you tried to handle internal? How did that look?
So what we did then is you make contact with like a truck stop here locally for fuel. Say, look, if this thing hits, we're going to need a lane for emergency vehicles. But it got to where it started getting scarce. Once those were out, our highway patrol, they were having accommodator tankers coming down and steer them in for emergency, vehicles. And there's a lot learned. And even from the state level down, I can see more of the administrative side of today than I did then. Right. But staging of these assets and between MEMA and FEMA staging things like food and water and different assets that we'll need. There was so many lessons learned, but yeah, the first week when you started running out of the fuel and water, and then you kind of start to see the desperation in some people's eyes just in the community that, what if I run out of this? I run out of that. Right. But yeah, a lot of learned as far as staging these assets on along the coast all the way around moving forward.
Okay. So probably staging, like you said, make sure you got a plan for your own self, staging all those assets as much as possible. I guess you guys had a lot of coordination between all of y'all, the city management, MEMA, FEMA, whoever else you could grab, I would think, things like that.
all the way down from the state level. But the first like I said, 72 hours, your meter spout is on its own, for a little while. And you got to worry about, our department. We have 11 stations here in Gulfport. We have 164 personnel. They're working all day. They've got to eat. The McDonald's isn't open. Hardee's isn't open. So you got to have food for these guys. They can't work without eating. Because as you know, on a day like today, it's 100 degrees outside with a heat index of 110.
Oh my God, yeah.
You're working in those conditions.
Yeah. So how do you feed them then? I mean, what were y'all doing?
So, we asked guys to bring in, stuff for that initial day. But then after that, it was, you're eating MREs and,
right.
And that's times when our local businesses step up. We've got a casino here locally, and they opened it up to us. Here's our freezers out of our restaurants.
Yeah.
So our guys, were able to eat and stuff like that. But
good.
Keeping these guys fed. I can remember here at our main station, just the guys taking showers. We hooked the truck up to the station and fill the station with water off our truck so the guys could shower. You get real innovative.
Yeah, that's
when,
great.
When you got no power, when it's hot and you get real innovative.
Yeah, that's really, really good. So as you kind of reflect back, I'm really looking at these stories where people were so resilient. Do you have any particular stories that stick out in your mind? The fire people, the fire folks, the police, even the citizens, particular stories about resilience, like you mentioned neighbor helping neighbor, any other things like that really stick with you?
Look, I remember there were a few things I remember. I can remember being on duty one day feeling helpless. When you're on at work, you want to help people. Yeah. But I can remember sitting at the railroad tracks, watching a house burn because we couldn't get to it. There's so much debris. And the cop that lived there in that house was sitting right there next to us, watching his house burn at the end of the street. Nobody could get there. That was a very helpless feeling. And Lord knows what, was going through that officer's head, when he, I had to sit and watch it, and because he knew we couldn't do anything, he couldn't. He just knew he lost everything he had. Yeah. I can remember one of our officers. He lived on a house close to the river, and he was probably 15 feet in the air, and his house was totally gone and swimming out. Saving his family in a boat and a tree, and then, but you know what? As soon as he gets them taken care of, he's back at work.
Right.
To help people. Yeah. That kind of resiliency is just, it was happening everywhere around here, from coast to coast. It's just this place just really stepped up, and a lot of people just did what they had to do.
Yeah. Well, you talked about that one fireman saving his own family, but y'all probably had a lot of saves of people you're doing. Like you talk about the folks in the attics. I've heard about people clinging the trees, all sorts of things.
Yeah, you got your initial, deaths that happen from the storm surge and things like that. But then you'd have kind of some collateral damage. I hate to put it like that, but, people running generators in their house, carbon monoxide poison, people trying to get trees off their house by themselves and, a tree falling on them. Yeah. And then, you've got a lot of elderly people out there that are in houses that are 110 degrees and they may need oxygen or may need that. So there was a lot of things that kind of built up later on. They didn't have the, things they needed. And I will say that after seeing the damage on the coast, if you'd have told me we'd have had power back in 2 weeks, I'd have lost every penny I had. But it was 2 weeks, and our power crews had our power back, and it was. I thought it'd have been 2 months.
Wow, that is incredible. Really, I've been down there. I was down there just a few weeks after, and that was incredible that they got the power there, and so many things were already done. That again showing the strength of y'all's communities down there. Mm-hmm. Really so strong. Other, I guess, observations. Like I guess if you were planning a response today that you had another Katrina heading your way, what would be some of the key things that we talked about? The staging, we talked about telling your people to get their own plans together. Anything else that comes to mind? That's
a huge one. Is basically the staging of your resources you need, whether it's water, fuel, food, and letting your employees and your people, which that's they make up everything in this city. They, they are the heartbeat, and make sure that your family's taken care of. Look, if you have the way to get them out of town, make sure they're taken care of so that you're mine right here. The worst thing, is to be at work worried about your loved ones. So that would be the big takeaway is just, my family, getting them somewhere I know they're safe, so I can focus on work and that as well. And just make sure your employees are taken care of, because, having a plan to where, I need to know your address, phone. I want to know everything, because, the way we work shifts, we would double up shifts, but I just need to know that our team is accounted for. That is a big one, because help's on the way. It's coming. It's just, you got to take care of yourself for 72 hours first, because there were people from all over come to help. For years there were people here.
Yeah, I call that the pain deductible. So you gotta have to go through some pain there. But so I remember, like, some of my own experiences. Just it took forever to get things back to normal. How long do you think it was until the coast and Gulfport, that area, got back to something recognizable, where like kids were back in school, and even though there's debris or damage everywhere, but at least things were kind of back?
I think it was probably a month and a half, 2 months, to where it was like, okay, we're getting some kids back in school. I think that was the big thing, a little bit of normalcy for them.
Sure.
Like you said, although there's debris piled up on every corner, and, buildings that are gone, was getting those kids back in school was very big. And, keeping their minds busy, because, idle minds and kids and their worry and worried about home, but getting them back to school was a big thing. And I would say that was every bit of a month and a half, 2 months.
Okay. Yeah.
But it was tough. But once, I guess, being in it every day, it felt like it took forever. But, really, from the damage that was here, we pulled our bootstraps up and got after it pretty quick.
Yeah, I still find how great y'all were. Just the energy and the resilience, amazing to this day. Now, we're doing this because we're coming up with the 20th anniversary of Katrina. And as we get closer to that August 29th date, what observations do you have, I guess, back in these last 20 years? How do you think the community is changed? Some thoughts around that.
I think the people of the coast are just, they're strong-willed people. Like you said, although we lost a lot of history, a lot of historical homes. We've got some beautiful homes that are built back, and they're built to better, higher standards. And they're going to be able to withstand that next storm. So our piers are starting to come back, and you're starting to get that look back, and it's great. It's bad that you lost so much, but it's something you get a clean slate that you could start from. And we had a lot of good leaders through the years, that saw that vision, and how the Gulf Coast can change for the better. And just, hey, we'll never forget about Katrina, but, we'll always know that, we're better now than we were then. Well,
you certainly have a new standard, worse than, or I guess maybe of a tougher caliber than what was it, the one at 69?
Yes.
Camille, yeah. So that was.
Yeah.
So I guess as we close, Mr. Kelley, any observations that you'd like to share with the listeners about, I guess, preparation for their own selves or something like this, and really observations about, I guess, the Gulf Coast in general?
Yeah, just, listen to your local leaders. They know what they're talking about, and be prepared, because I know people get false alarms after false alarms, but if you got to leave town or where, but if they tell you to leave town, and be prepared, because you're solely have to take care of your family. There'll be people coming to help, I can assure you. FEMA, MEMA, and the church organizations and Red Cross and so, they're coming. But make sure you take care of your family first, and because you got to take care of yourself for 72 hours. And, if you're in harm's way, we're going to come out, and now you're putting first responders in harm's way too. So, if you're in an area where your local officials say you need to evacuate, listen to them.
Yeah. That's great advice. Really good advice.
Okay, Mr. Kelley, I can't thank you enough for your time, sir. I know you've been busy, and again, you and all those folks who went through that, especially the jobs you guys had, you guys are kind of like my weather heroes. So thank you.
Well, that's a big word, and I appreciate it. But and I'm sure just like the community you live in, it's family, and we're going to look after each other. And I'd say everybody from the Gulf Coast was a hero after that storm, because everybody did what they had to do and made this place better as it is. And thank you for bringing awareness to this and chronicling it so that we'll be able to look back and remember what it was like.
Yeah.